Welcome to Time to Shine Today podcast, episode 31, Taking Risks for the Win. This is Scott Ferguson. Let's level up. Hey, Time to Shine Farsi Squad and my Fergie Fanatics. It is a beautiful day here in South Florida, and actually I'm a little bit late getting this podcast out just because I decided to go enjoy some of this gorgeous weather that they have down here. Man, I live in my version of paradise. I would strongly recommend anybody that wants to get out of the cold, if you're in the cold at this time of the year, it is February, head down to South Florida. It's gorgeous, low humidity, temperatures in the 80s. And the reason why I'm kind of saying this, not to rub it in your face or anything, but I made the decision to move to South Florida from Detroit 6 years ago. And I knew that doing it would get me so far out of my comfort zone, it's not even funny. Taking Risks for the Win is our podcast today. And I'll tell you what, moving from Detroit, where I had a very decent real estate practice, to South Florida took a lot of cojones. But I also kind of weighed the pros and the cons that said if I can get down here, provide as much service as I can, and work to make people happy and put them in houses, then it would all work out. So I weighed it, took the risk, and came down. and I'm so glad that I did. I've met so many great people, met the woman of my dreams, and it's just been a phenomenal journey. But let's get into our podcast today. Again, it's Taking Risks for the Win. So we're going to level up every day and get out of our comfort zone. You know, on our deathbeds, it might sound a little cliche, but on our deathbeds, it won't be the risks we took that we'll regret. The ones that'll fill our heart with sadness, regrets, will be the ones we didn't take. Period. So remember that when you're wanting to take the leap and get out there, put yourself out there in a zone that you're not comfortable, just know you'll regret it if you don't, especially if it's something you're super passionate about. I guess the fears is what kind of comes up and stops us from taking those risks. And the fear is really just pain that you're having to deal with. Like, as Tony Robbins says, we either want to be comfortable or we're not, and we're going to step out of our comfort zone. And pain is just a voice that's in your head that's feeding your fear. I just want you to not give pain that voice. Don't let pain dictate where you're going or stop you from going through it, okay? There's so many fears out there that is so fabricated. You know, the acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real. Let's just fully face our fears. Let's get comfortable being uncomfortable. I know it's easier said than done, but if you have something that you're very passionate about, something that you want to do and accomplish, and to consistently level up your life, get after it. Take the risk. The worst thing that can happen is you fail. And guess what? When you fail forward. So stop searching for security and start pursuing your dreams and opportunities. And again, the way you do that is to break things down, all your goals down. I'm going to throw the Rod Harrison quote that I use daily that's printed above my desk. Inch by inch, it's a cinch. By the yard, it's hard. Read his book. It's in the show notes. But continuously move forward. If you fail at something you took a risk at, who cares? Again, you're feeling forward. You just keep trying. Life's nothing more than a game of numbers. So the more risks you take, and the ones you do accomplish, the more rewards you'll receive. Period. Here's an awesome quote by Robin Sharma that was actually told, and he's the guy that wrote the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, or Who Will Cry When You Die, the 5 a.m. rule. He writes, well, actually his father told him this. It's risky out on the limb, but that's where the fruit is. Wow. Think about it. You don't get that fruit unless you go out on a limb. Period. You know, when I was younger, I was super skinny. You know, I'm sure everybody has their scenarios in their life, but I was this skinny guy. I was wiry and I was tenacious, but I was a skinny dude, man. And luckily I was pretty decent at athletics. But I went in the Navy and made it through all my training. And then I was around these guys. They were just complete beasts. And here I am, this wiry, tenacious guy. But I would follow all these guys around to go lift weights. And I remember getting under just the bar that weighs 45 pounds and took it off the bench press and it fell on my chest. And I heard some sneakers around and I was embarrassed. But my really good friend Kevin Asher, who I served 4 years with in the United States Navy, said, just keep going, keep going. And so then I started picking up all the magazines and seeing all these bodybuilders. And I said, one day I'm going to compete in a bodybuilding competition. Some people laughed at me, and it's scary. But I did hunker down. I hired a coach. This is 15 years later. I just kept lifting. I grew into a pretty big man. But then I went into some depression and got fat. So I figured the way to not be fat is to take the risk of doing something that 99% of the people on this earth won't do, and that is put on some bodybuilding posing trunks and get up in front of 1,000 people and flex their muscles. So I had built the foundation with my body, and then went through, like I said, my depression, and I was fat. So I hired a coach to really get me dialed in and made the commitment to step on stage and compete in a bodybuilding show. I was scared crapless. I didn't know. I remember standing there ready to go out. It did all the preparation. I stood there, and I'm somebody that has spoke in front of a lot of people in the past. But I stood there, and I was not about to go do my routine. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was Eminem's song playing in the background. Lose Yourself. Or I'm sorry, it was I'm Not Afraid. And I went through the routine, and people cheered me. And let me tell you something. Out of 14 competitors, I took 14th. And when it was done, I just didn't care. I had taken the risk. I had gotten out there and just did it. And it was one of the most rewarding things that I've ever did in my life. And it's not the money-making thing, or it was just something that it was a risk that I went and did. It was kind of like buying my first investment property, too. I read that anything you want's on the other side of fear. And that's just the truth. So I've rambled a little bit longer than I usually have, but I want my varsity squad, my Fergie fanatics, to get out there and take the risks. Because really, what's the worst that could happen? You fail forward. Okay, so if you want to put any of your risks in writing that you're afraid of, go to facebook.com/time to shine today. So get out there. Let's fire up. Let's level up our health. Let's level up our wealth, because it's your time to shine. Ciao. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Time to Shine Today. If you're a business owner or professional who would like to be interviewed on our podcast, please visit timetoshinetoday.com/guest. If you like this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. There's a link in the show notes to our website. Also there, you will see our recommended resources. We hope you will help support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've been listening to, it'd be great if you could just give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe while you're at it. I'm your host, Scott Ferguson. Until next time, level up. It's your time to shine.